Two officers thought they found an easy target, a black woman alone on a quiet street. They handcuffed her, searched her car, and demanded money. But the ordinary woman they mocked was a colonel in the United States Air Force, and her next words sent shockwaves from Maplewood to Washington. This story isn't just about injustice, it's about justice catching up fast. Before we uncover the full story, sit back and relax. Hit like and subscribe so you don't miss more stories just like this. Under the dim glow of a streetlight in Maplewood, Ohio, a pair of hands, cuffed tightly with gleaming metal, caught the faint light. They belonged to Colonel Elaine Carter, a 62-year-old African-American woman, her fingers marked red from the cuff's bite. She stood tall next to her polished silver Cadillac ATS, parked on the quiet roadside. The luxury car shone under the yellow streetlights, a stark contrast to her situation. Elaine's navy blazer was slightly wrinkled, one sleeve tugged unevenly from a brief struggle. Her face, partially shadowed, showed a tight jaw and steady eyes, not fear, but a quiet, burning resolve. Two officers stood nearby. Officer Tom Grayson, a heavy-set man in his late 40s with a flushed face, leaned against his patrol car, arms crossed, smirking at Elaine. "Told you to behave, ma'am," he said, his voice dripping with smugness. "Just stay put, Miss Fancy Car." Officer Jake Munson, younger with a short buzz cut, chuckled as he paced around the Cadillac, peering into its windows. "Bet there's something shady in here," he muttered. Elaine's heart raced, but she kept her composure. The cool fall air carried the scent of wet leaves and exhaust. She knew she'd done nothing wrong, driving to visit her sister after a long day at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Yet here she was, humiliated, her high rank in the Air Force unknown to these men, who saw only her skin and her car. Elaine Carter stood firm, her wrists aching from the tight cuffs, but her voice stayed calm and steady. "What you're doing is wrong," she said, her eyes locked on Officer Grayson. "You've got no reason to stop me, search my car, or cuff me like this. This is illegal." The words hung in the cool Ohio air, sharp and clear. Grayson laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the empty street. "Illegal? Lady, around here I decide what's legal," he sneered, stepping closer, his breath heavy with coffee. "Driving a car like that in this neighborhood? That's enough for me." Munson, still circling the Cadillac, joined in with a mocking grin. "Yeah, let's see what's in this fancy ride. Probably hiding something." Elaine took a slow breath, the scent of damp asphalt grounding her. She wasn't about to let their taunts shake her. "I want your names and badge numbers," she said, her tone growing firmer, "and I'm entitled to a phone call." Grayson's smirk faded, his face reddening. "Entitled? Who do you think you are making demands?" He jabbed a finger at his name tag. "Grayson, badge OC 2241. That's Munson, OC 3176. Happy now? Go tell it to your cheap lawyer." Munson snickered, leaning against the patrol car. "A phone call? What, calling your sister to bail you out?" Elaine didn't flinch. She'd faced worse in her 30 years in the Air Force, rising to colonel at Wright-Patterson. These men didn't know who they were dealing with, but she wouldn't stoop to their level. "I'm asking again," she said, voice like steel. "Names, numbers, and my call." Their laughter grew louder, but it was nervous now, like they sensed her strength. Grayson crossed his arms tighter. "Keep talking, ma'am. You're just making this harder." Elaine's silence was her weapon, her calm a challenge they didn't expect. They were used to fear, not this quiet defiance from a black woman in cuffs. Neither officer could have guessed that her next call would ripple far beyond Maplewood, shaking their world and beyond. About 15 minutes earlier, Elaine Carter was cruising down Elm Street in Maplewood, Ohio, in her silver Cadillac ATS. The 62-year-old Air Force colonel was headed to her sister's house, a 20-mile drive from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where she served as a senior logistics officer. It was a rare evening off, and all she wanted was to share a home-cooked meal and catch up. Her face showed the wear of a long day, but her eyes were bright with anticipation. Elm Street was a familiar shortcut from her childhood, cutting through a modest neighborhood of single-story homes and corner stores. She barely noticed the police cruiser trailing her, its lights off. Elaine wasn't speeding, keeping steady at 30 miles per hour, well under the 35 mph limit. She didn't swerve or break any traffic rules, but to Officers Tom Grayson and Jake Munson, the sight of a black woman driving a luxury car in this part of town was reason enough to act. "Check out that Cadillac," Munson said from the passenger seat, his voice thick with suspicion. He'd only been on the force 6 months, eager to prove himself. "Bet it's stolen or she's up to something. Nobody from here drives a car like that." Grayson, a 15-year veteran with a chip on his shoulder, nodded. "Yeah, looks out of place. Let's see what she's hiding. Maybe some cash or worse." He smirked, flipping on the red and blue lights. The siren blipped once. Elaine glanced in her rearview mirror, startled but calm. With a small sigh, she flicked on her blinker, eased the car to the curb, and turned off the engine. She lowered her window halfway, hands resting on the wheel, just as she'd always done during routine stops. Grayson swaggered up to her window, skipping any greeting. He rapped hard on the glass with his knuckles. "Get out of the car now," he barked, his tone sharp. Elaine frowned, keeping her cool. "Officer, what's the problem? Did I do something wrong?" Grayson's hand hovered near his holster. "I said get out. Don't make me ask again." Elaine reached for her purse on the passenger seat, pulling out her driver's license and registration. "Here are my papers," she said evenly, handing them over. Grayson snatched them, barely glancing at the name or the Wright Patterson address. To him, her military status didn't register. "What's a car like this doing around here?" he demanded, eyeing her up and down. "You don't belong in this neighborhood. What's your deal?" Munson stood behind the car, arms crossed, smirking. Elaine stepped out, standing tall despite the insult. "I'm visiting my sister. She lives 3 blocks away. I'm an Air Force officer, on leave. This car's mine, bought with my salary." Her calm, professional tone only seemed to irritate them more. Officer Grayson's eyes narrowed as Elaine Carter stood her ground, unfazed by his harsh tone. Sensing he wasn't getting the reaction he wanted, he changed tactics. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a fake friendly drawl. "Look, Miss Carter, let's not make a big fuss," he said, glancing around the quiet Maplewood street. "It's getting late, and we all want to head home. How about we settle this quick and easy?" He paused, giving her a sly look. "Say a small fee, maybe $1,000 cash, for driving around looking suspicious. No report, no search, just hand it over, and you're free to go. No trouble." Elaine's stomach churned at the blatant extortion, but her face stayed stone cold. She'd dealt with tougher situations in her 30 years in the Air Force. "Officer," she said, her voice sharp but calm, "what you're suggesting is a crime. I haven't done anything wrong, and I'm not paying you a dime. This is harassment, plain and simple, and I want my license and registration back now." She stood taller, her gaze piercing Grayson. "If you're writing me up, do it properly, and I need your names and badge numbers again." Grayson's fake smile vanished, his face flushing red. Munson, standing nearby, shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension spike. Elaine's refusal stung, her steady confidence a direct challenge to their authority. "You're making a mistake, lady," Grayson growled, stepping back. Elaine didn't budge, her heart pounding but her resolve unbreakable. She knew her rights, and as a colonel she'd faced bigger threats than this. The officer's smugness was about to unravel, and Elaine was ready to turn the tables. Officer Grayson's face twisted with anger at Elaine Carter's defiance. Her calm, unwavering demand for their names and her refusal to pay his bribe pushed him over the edge. "You want to play tough?" he snapped, his voice booming across the quiet Maplewood street. He turned to Officer Munson, eyes blazing. "Cuff her, Jake. She's resisting an officer." Munson didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, grabbing Elaine's arm and yanking it behind her back with a rough twist. Elaine gasped, pain shooting through her shoulder, but she tried to step back. Grayson grabbed her other arm, pinning her against the Cadillac. "Stop moving," he shouted. The cold metal cuffs clicked tightly around her wrists, biting into her skin. Elaine's heart raced, the humiliation burning, but she forced herself to stay composed. "This is assault," she said, her voice low but firm. Grayson ignored her, smirking. "Keep talking, lady. That's another charge." Munson, grinning, grabbed Elaine's purse from the front seat of the Cadillac without permission. He dumped its contents, wallet, keys, a small notepad, and her military-issue phone, onto the hood of the patrol car. "Let's see what else you're hiding," he said, rifling through her things illegally. Grayson leaned in close, his breath sour. "Not so high and mighty now, are you?" Elaine's wrists throbbed, but she focused on the cool night air, the faint smell of rain on the pavement. She'd faced hostile situations in her career as an Air Force colonel, and she knew panic wouldn't help. These officers thought they'd won, their taunts growing louder as they mocked her cuffed hands and fancy car. They had no clue who she was, a senior officer with decades of service, or the storm they'd just unleashed. Elaine's mind sharpened, already planning her next move. She'd stay calm, let them dig their own hole, and wait for the moment to strike back with the full weight of her authority. Elaine Carter's wrists burned from the cuffs, but she kept her head high, her voice steady despite the officer's taunts. "I need to make a phone call," she said, her tone calm but firm, cutting through the chilly Maplewood night. Officer Grayson sneered, rolling his eyes. "A call? What, to your sister? Or some low-rent lawyer?" Officer Munson chuckled, holding Elaine's military-issue phone, its sleek design catching the streetlight. "Fancy phone. Probably not even yours," he mocked. Elaine ignored them, her years as an Air Force colonel kicking in. She knew her rights. "It's my legal right," she pressed. Grayson shrugged, smirking. "Fine, let her make her little call. Should be fun to watch." Munson, still grinning, held the phone to her ear since her hands were cuffed. Elaine took a deep breath, the scent of wet leaves steadying her. She spoke clearly into the phone, her voice carrying the weight of command. "This is Colonel Elaine Carter, service number Bravo Tango 3925041. The smug smiles on Grayson and Munson's faces froze. "Colonel?" Munson muttered, glancing at Grayson, who looked uneasy. Elaine continued, unfazed. "I'm on an unsecured line, requesting immediate connection to the Air Force Operations Center at Wright-Patterson. Priority 1. I'm reporting an incident. Unlawful detention by Maplewood police officers Tom Grayson, badge OC 2241, and Jake Munson, badge OC 3176. Charges include abuse of power, racial bias, and attempted extortion. I'm at Elm Street and 5th Avenue, Maplewood, Ohio." The officers stood stunned, the words Air Force Operations Center and extortion hitting like a thunderclap. Elaine's voice stayed even. "Request immediate notification to Major General Linda Hayes, Air Force Chief of Staff Office, and coordination with Air Force Office of Special Investigations and the FBI for intervention." Grayson's face went pale, his hand twitching. Munson dropped the flashlight, its clatter loud in the sudden silence. Elaine paused, listening to the response only she could hear, her eyes fixed on the officers. They'd mocked her, cuffed her, and tried to shake her down, thinking she was just another civilian. Now, the truth of her rank, a colonel with connections to the highest levels of the military, hung in the air, and the officers' confidence crumbled as they realized the massive mistake they'd made. The quiet of Elm Street shattered as tires screeched, and 2 patrol cars plus a sleek black sedan pulled up, their lights flashing silently in the Maplewood night. Police Chief Robert Daniels, a gray-haired man in his 50s, stepped out of the sedan, his face tight with worry. 2 senior officers followed, their expressions grim. Chief Daniels hurried toward Colonel Elaine Carter, still cuffed by her Cadillac. He barely glanced at Officers Grayson and Munson, who stood frozen by their patrol car, looking like kids caught in trouble. "Colonel Carter," Daniels said, his voice shaky but respectful. "I'm Chief Daniels. I just got a call from Wright-Patterson in the Pentagon. On behalf of the Maplewood Police, I'm deeply sorry for this mess. This shouldn't have happened." He turned to one of his officers. "Lieutenant Harper, uncuff the colonel carefully." Harper rushed over, gently unlocking the cuffs. Red marks stood out on Elaine's wrists, but she stood tall, her gaze steady on Daniels. The chief swallowed hard. "We'll cooperate fully with the Air Force and federal investigators. This will be handled openly." Then he faced Grayson and Munson, his voice hard. "Officers Grayson and Munson, turn in your badges, guns, and IDs now. You're suspended, effective immediately. Head back to the station conference room 2, and don't move until you're told." The 2 officers, faces pale, fumbled to hand over their gear to Harper. They didn't dare speak, their earlier smugness gone. Elaine rubbed her wrists, the cool air soothing her skin. She said nothing, but her calm presence spoke volumes. Grayson and Munson slunk to a patrol car, driven away under the watchful eyes of their colleagues. The scene was locked down. Elaine, now the center of a situation that would shake Maplewood's police department to its core, with the weight of her rank and the Pentagon behind her. The incident on Elm Street triggered a whirlwind investigation that swept through Maplewood, Ohio, faster than a summer storm. The FBI took charge, with Special Agent Laura Bennett, a sharp investigator from the regional office, leading the effort. The Air Force sent a crack team from the Office of Special Investigations, OSI, to work alongside them, ensuring Colonel Elaine Carter's rights were protected and digging into the military angle. Elaine's testimony was the heart of the case. Sitting in a quiet room at the FBI's field office, she recounted every detail of that night. The baseless stop, the racist taunts, the extortion attempt, and the rough cuffing. Her 30 years as a colonel gave her a steel trap memory, and she laid out the facts with calm precision, naming Officers Grayson and Munson, their badge numbers, and every insulting word they'd thrown at her. The evidence piled up quickly. Body cam footage from Grayson and Munson, though spotty in parts, captured enough. Their aggressive tone, the unwarranted stop, and the moment they cuffed Elaine without cause. The FBI seized Elaine's military phone, pulling a recording of her call to Wright-Patterson's operations center, which backed her story with crystal-clear audio. Investigators grilled Grayson and Munson separately. Under pressure from seasoned FBI and OSI agents, their stories fell apart. They stumbled over contradictions, blaming each other or claiming it was all a misunderstanding. Eventually, they admitted to the improper stop and cuffing, but denied the extortion attempt. Elaine's detailed account, plus the body cam clips, made their denials useless. The FBI dug deeper, uncovering a trail of complaints against Grayson, 15 years of reported bullying and bias, mostly swept under the rug by the Maplewood PD. Munson, newer to the force, had a few red flags too, including whispers of racial profiling. Bank records showed odd cash deposits in Grayson's account, hinting he'd pulled similar stunts before. The evidence was overwhelming. Based on the FBI and OSI findings, federal prosecutors built a case against Grayson and Munson, charging them with violating Elaine's civil rights under federal law, attempted extortion under the Hobbs Act, and unlawful detention. The Maplewood Police Department, under fire, had no choice but to cooperate fully, handing over records and suspending the officers' access to systems. Elaine remained composed throughout, her professionalism shining as she worked with investigators, never letting emotion cloud her focus. Her testimony and the hard evidence ensured the case was airtight, setting the stage for a reckoning that would hold Grayson and Munson accountable and send a message far beyond Maplewood's quiet streets. Months later, the federal courtroom in Columbus, Ohio, buzzed with tension as the trial of officers Tom Grayson and Jake Munson began. The case, dubbed the Air Force Colonel Incident, drew national attention, with TV crews and reporters packing the courthouse steps. Colonel Elaine Carter, 62, walked in wearing her crisp Air Force uniform, her Silver Eagle insignia gleaming alongside rows of service ribbons. Her presence alone hushed the room. She didn't need to say much to command respect. On the witness stand, Elaine spoke clearly, her voice steady as she recounted the night on Elm Street. The unjust stop, the racist remarks, the $1,000 extortion attempt, and the painful cuffing. Her decades as a logistics officer made her testimony precise, every detail sharp. When defense lawyers tried to trip her up, suggesting she'd been uncooperative, Elaine countered with calm logic, leaving their arguments flat. The federal prosecutors brought a mountain of evidence. Body cam clips showed Grayson's aggressive tone, and Munson's smirk FaceTime audio from Elaine's call to Wright Patterson played, her voice naming the officers and detailing their crimes. Expert witnesses, former cops and civil rights lawyers, explained how the stop violated protocol and reeked of racial bias. Financial records hinted at Grayson's history of suspicious cash deposits, and personnel files revealed his long list of ignored complaints. The prosecution painted a clear picture. Two officers, driven by prejudice and greed, abused their power against a distinguished black woman who happened to be a high-ranking Air Force colonel. The defense had little to work with. Grayson's lawyer argued he was overworked and misjudged the situation, while Munson claimed he was just following orders. But these excuses sounded weak against the evidence and Elaine's unshakable credibility. The jury, a mix of Ohioans from all walks of life, listened closely. After a short deliberation, they returned with a unanimous verdict. Guilty on all counts: federal civil rights violations, attempted extortion, and unlawful detention. The courtroom was silent as Federal Judge Margaret Lawson, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for fairness, delivered the sentence. "Officers Grayson and Munson," she said, her voice firm, "you betrayed your oath to serve and protect. You targeted Colonel Carter because of her race, insulted her dignity, and tried to extort her. She is a hero who has served this nation for 30 years, and your actions disgraced not just your badges, but every officer who served honorably." She was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison, a ruling that hit like a gavel's bang. Grayson's shoulders slumped, and Munson's face drained of color as federal agents cuffed them. Ironic echoes of that night in Maplewood. Elaine sat quietly, her expression unchanged, but her presence spoke of justice served. The verdict sent shockwaves, a loud message that no one, not even cops, was above the law, especially when targeting a woman whose service and strength stood taller than their prejudice. The 7-year prison sentences for Tom Grayson and Jake Munson rocked Maplewood, Ohio, and echoed across the country, a bold stand against police abuse and racial bias. The Maplewood Police Department faced a firestorm of criticism, with the U.S. Department of Justice breathing down its neck. Chief Robert Daniels, overwhelmed by the scandal, resigned early, and the department scrambled to rebuild trust. They overhauled hiring, mandating background checks for bias, and rolled out training on cultural sensitivity and de-escalation. Body cams became non-negotiable, with strict rules against tampering, and a civilian oversight board was set up to handle complaints with real authority. The reforms were a start, but Maplewood had a long road ahead to repair its reputation. Colonel Elaine Carter, true to her character, stayed out of the spotlight. After testifying and working with investigators, she quietly returned to her sister's house for the rest of her leave. Her sister, worried sick but bursting with pride, fussed over her, cooking her favorite meals. Elaine turned down every media interview, letting a brief Air Force press release speak for her. In it, she thanked the FBI, OSI, and prosecutors for their swift action, praised the justice system, and said she hoped her case would spark change. She made clear that most police officers serve honorably, and her fight wasn't against them, but against injustice. Back at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Elaine resumed her role as a logistics colonel, overseeing critical operations with the same steady hand. Her reputation grew, not just as a skilled leader, but as a symbol of resilience and integrity. The Elm Street incident did not break her. It fueled her. She started mentoring young officers, especially women and people of color, sharing lessons on navigating challenges in the military. She spoke at Air Force seminars on diversity and civil-military relations, turning her pain into progress without a hint of bitterness. At 62, Elaine remained a force, her Silver Eagle insignia a reminder of her strength. Her story inspired others to stand tall against wrong, whether in uniform or on a quiet Ohio street. Maplewood scars lingered, but Elaine's courage planted seeds of hope for a fairer future, proving one woman's resolve could shift the balance of power and leave a legacy far beyond that fateful night. Colonel Elaine Carter's story didn't end on Elm Street or in the courtroom. It became a beacon for standing up to injustice. Her courage showed that one person's resolve can challenge even the deepest wrongs, no matter their rank or the odds against them. Elaine taught us that dignity and truth are stronger than prejudice, and staying calm under pressure can turn the tide. Her fight reminds us to know our rights, speak out against unfairness, and never let fear silence us. In our own lives, we can draw from her example. Whether facing bias at work, in our communities, or anywhere else, we have the power to demand respect and drive change. Elaine's legacy urges us to lift others up, mentor those facing hurdles, and build a fairer world, one act of courage at a time. Her story is a call to action. Stand tall, stay true, and make a difference. If Elaine's journey inspired you, hit that subscribe button and join our YouTube channel. Don't miss more meaningful stories like hers that show how ordinary people can spark extraordinary change. Together, let's keep sharing tales of hope and justice every week.